Today, we're examining the horrific death of Libby Squire in February 2019. Now, this is a tale about arriving late to a party. Libby and her killer were strangers to each other, but they were caught on camera anyway. This is the case of Libby Squire. High Wycombe, Buckinghamshire, was home to a young lady named Libby Squire. Her parents, Lisa and Russ, raised 4 children, with her being the eldest. She dated a guy named Connor Pye for a very long time. The two had discussed getting married and starting a family numerous times. Libby was praised as a genuine and caring learner. She was a dedicated worker and a loving mother. Lisa, who affectionately referred to her daughter as Pye, said that she was an outgoing girl who enjoyed spending time with her friends. Libby went back to the University of Hull in September 2018 to finish her undergraduate studies in philosophy. She decided on the university because she enjoyed living in the area. And on the evening of January 31st, 2019, as the snow and rain began to fall, Libby and her classmates were out doing what students do best, having a good time. That evening, at least initially, they were inside their house. We're getting a few cocktails in before our big night out, and after a couple of alcoholic beverages, the group decided to go to the Welly, a neighborhood nightclub. The club hosted club nights and gigs for adults and college students in a lavish ballroom with an additional dance floor overhead. Functioning as a nightclub, the Wiley was obligated to admit only cheery punters and turn away anyone who appeared to be too inebriated to make sound decisions. And that night, Libby made the mistake of drinking too much. When she tried to enter, security turned her away. Many of us have been in that kind of uncomfortable situation before. Well, what do? All go home together or continue the night, and the luckless few are back at their own places. After Libby has safely returned home by cab, the party still intends to continue their evening. Also, it's 11:26 p.m. right now. They waved goodbye to Libby as the taxi drove up, and then they all hopped inside. With music blasting and drinks pouring, the nightclub echoed into the wee hours of the morning, where Libby and her pals continued to have a good time. However, Amelia, one of Libby's friends, Libby hadn't texted her to let her know she was safe and sound at home. Amelia sent a text to their shared roommate, Erin, inquiring as to whether or not Libby had returned. It turned out that she hadn't. Libby mysteriously disappeared, and nobody had a clue where she could be. After getting back to their house, they looked all around town for her. Still, no luck. The friends of Libby were really worried. Her sudden disappearance was quite unexpected. So, around 2:21, they made a police call. There was an immediate response, and the search began. More than 70 police officers were put on the case of Libby, and over 200 students helped in the hunt. Residents were encouraged to examine their garages and other outbuildings in case she had sought refuge there. Countless drains, garbage cans, and surrounding fields were investigated. Police will look into leads and local videos over the next few days. Putting together surveillance footage is now a lot like assembling a puzzle. You eventually get to understand the picture, slowly but surely. And what authorities were able to learn a couple of days after she vanished was that she had returned home that evening. As shown on the taxi driver's dashcam footage, it was 11:29 at night. Later that night, she succeeded in reaching a home's entrance. Even more eyewitnesses from the neighborhood spotted her, but they speculated that she wasn't in the mood to wait at home all night. Within a few moments, surveillance footage and a neighbor's report proved that she had left her house. Someone spotted her heading solo toward Beverley Road. Back on the main road again at around 11:39 p.m. Libby probably spilled her beverages when she tripped and fell on the sidewalk. Luckily, some kind citizens who happened to be passing by stopped to pick her up off the ground and set her down on a bench beside the wall. 10 minutes in, however, she'd had enough of them. This prompted her to politely request that they depart. They did, and they continued on with the rest of their evening. However, at 11:57 p.m., Libby's night went from terrible to fatal when surveillance cameras caught a man walking by her on Beverley Road as she crossed to Bearsfoot Avenue. It was initially unclear who this individual was. However, additional security footage later identified him as Pawel Relowicz. At the same time, police began taking an interest in him for other reasons. Pawel Relowicz, 24 at the time, was a local man. He was born in Poland and raised in the Warsaw area prior to relocating to the UK in 2012. From all appearances, Pawel was a devoted family man. He was the neighborhood butcher and the breadwinner for a family. He was a gym enthusiast and worked really hard. In the eyes of justice, however, the glow of innocence was quickly fading. Shortly after his disappearance, reports and claims from neighborhood residents accused him of committing a number of crimes. That's right, those were legitimate accusations. In the days that followed, authorities were able to compile evidence of a wide range of crimes that occurred between December 2017 and January 2019. Voyeurism, outraging public decency, and 3 counts of burglary were among the allegations, and it wasn't long before people figured out that Pawel Relowicz's intended victims were the local female college students. These, however, had nothing to do with Libby. But the truth is that Pawel Relowicz was a sexual offender. Many pupils have reported seeing Pawel Relowicz, who at the time was unknown to them, looking at female students through their bedroom windows. While they were disrobing, he was notorious for breaking into students' homes and stealing sex objects and underwear. 2 females who saw him walking around with his pants down to his ankles were terrified, and other witnesses recalled him performing sex acts on himself in the streets. On the evening of January 31st, Libby walked right into his path without ever realizing it. At 11:59, 2 minutes after Pawel bumps into Libby on the wall, she gets up and begins to stroll down Beverley Road. Pawel leaves Bearsfoot Avenue and starts walking in the same direction as Libby, but on the opposite side of the road for about 30 seconds as she continues to stagger down the road and look clearly vulnerable to alcohol. After another 30 seconds, he dashes across the street to meet her, and the two run off together into the abandoned nunnery grounds. After only a minute, Libby and Pawel were heard heading back up Beverley Road at around 2 hours in the morning. Exactly 1 minute and 9 seconds after their initial encounter, they were back at the intersection of Haworth and nearby streets. Garage surveillance footage shows Pawel safely back in his car. He is seated behind the wheel with his feet hanging out the open door. 3 minutes later, he gets up and starts walking back toward Beverley Road after a car pulls away. Enhanced camera footage shows 2 people strolling across the end of the street and then seemingly standing together. And now we're making our way to Pawel's vehicle. Then we went back to the storage area. Surveillance footage shows Libby slipping into the passenger seat just as Pawel is getting into the driver's. At 12:08 a.m., Pawel gets into his car and drives away, marking the last time Libby will ever be seen alive. Evidence against Pawel Relowicz was mounting as new allegations surfaced, and on February 7, 2019, Pawel Relowicz was arrested on suspicion of abducting Libby Squire. They took his car while they looked for information on Libby's whereabouts. Also, inside the vehicle on March 20th at 3:30 was a pink duffel bag containing 2 masks and sex toys reported stolen from various student residences in the city. A body was discovered in the Humber estuary near Hull in the afternoon. Police brought the body to the coroner, who later determined that the deceased was Libby Squire. 6 weeks had passed since she vanished, and the entire world was in a state of despair. The pain for the family and friends continues. When Libby was last seen on CCTV, she left flowers on the bench. Tributes were placed all across campus, and a vigil was held in her honour at Hull's Minster. Since Libby's remains had been in the water for so long, Home Office pathologist Matthew Lyle ruled out asphyxiation as a cause of death, but said he couldn't be sure. Libby had bruises all over her body, including her stomach, chest, and legs. Libby's blood alcohol content measured at 190 milligrams per 100 millilitres, putting her more than twice over the legal limit for operating a motor vehicle, according to toxicology data. Now that Libby's body has been located, authorities can investigate the case as a possible murder. With this newfound power, additional probes into Pawel Relowicz's activities were initiated. By this point, more information about Libby's final moments and Pawel Relowicz's movements was starting to accumulate. A neighbour whose home overlooked the Oak Road playing fields claimed that just after midnight on the night of Libby's disappearance, she heard cries. He then heard the screaming once more, through fresh security footage uncovered before the incident, a few minutes after he awoke. Before examining the Oak Road playing grounds, it seems that Pawel showed off his car at a nearby garage around 9 o'clock, finding it very calm and deserted. After that, he started prowling the streets for weak, easy women. When he did, he found Libby Squire, who was crying and distraught from drinking alone. Unfortunately, because of her drinking and possibly hypothermia, She was unable to adequately explain her thoughts to herself that evening. And at that very moment, Pawel Relowicz was finally successful in his efforts to get her into his vehicle. At 12:11 a.m., he took her to the Oak Road playing fields, which were a couple blocks away from where they were. The screams heard at 12:14 a.m. from a nearby home likely were from Libby, as he sexually abused her. While doing so, he allegedly choked her to death. Pawel bolted out of there at 12:23. At this point, it's impossible to say if Libby was already dead or simply comatose from the cold. She was left in the cold as Pawel went home to soak in a hot tub. 2 hours and 25 minutes later, at 2:25 a.m., he was back at the Oak Road playground. He then tossed Libby's body into the river after picking it up. 6 weeks later, Libby's body was discovered in the Humber, which is where this river flows. But do you believe he left it at that? In fact, Pawel Relowicz was spotted masturbating in the middle of Newlands Avenue at 2:51 a.m. on the same day. The formal charges against Pawel Relowicz for Libby's murder were filed on October 24, 2019. In January of 2021, 1 year and 3 months later, his trial began. In the first week of his trial, the jury held Pawel Relowicz responsible for the rape and murder of Libby Squire, as well as a long list of other sexually motivated crimes. He didn't seem to care as the jury foreman announced the verdicts. The jury reached a unanimous judgment of guilt on the rape charge and an 11-to-1 majority verdict of guilt on the murder charge. Pawel Relowicz was given a minimum term of 27 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole in 2048. His own defense attorney described his crimes as utterly disgusting in court. And that is the story of Libby Squire and Pawel Relowicz, the man who killed her. Pawel Relowicz's wife and 2 girls left him when he was on the run in Poland for his crimes. He sent them a letter after he was convicted and sentenced. And in the letter he said, "I wanted to ask how you are feeling. Do you still love me? I will never stop loving you. I want to come back so much. We have beautiful children and you are beautiful. I want you to be strong, love the children and love me. I will return to you. I promise you this." Then, in order to watch TV while serving a prison sentence, he requests that she wire him £70 into his bank account. Let's hope she never fulfilled that wish for him. Pawel, may you burn in hell. 27 years is not long enough.